All right, guys, here we are with our P16s, and tonight we're going to learn how to build a mix from the ground up. I'm going to play for you right now the test mix that we were using when we all gathered not too long ago. If you weren't there at that night, no worries. We're going to go over everything tonight. So here's that test mix. All right, and now we're going to learn how to rebuild that from the ground up. So what I try to do first is whenever we're starting from nothing, we're going to go to our mains first, and we're going to make sure that our main volume is turned up pretty substantially. I personally like to either do max, so that would look like that, or I like to do it 2 lights from the top. If you go to max and then you find that once everybody starts playing, you need to turn it up, you're kind of stuck where you have to either use this output gain or you have to go through and turn everything up. So I personally like to just have this at 2 lights from the top, and then later on, if I need to, I can turn my whole mix up. So now that we have that, we want to set a couple of things as like our foundation for our mix. These are the things that are going to tell us in the long run how loud everything is. And once we've set these, we really shouldn't go back and change them. What we want to do is go back and change other elements of our mix to make sure things are well balanced. So we'll start with what everybody needs to hear, the click. And what we're going to do is we're going to slowly turn the click up basically until it's as loud as we can stand. And not stand for like a minute or two, but like an hour. So that, for me personally, is as loud as I can stand that thing. I really don't want that any louder in my ears. And you can actually see on this limiter over here, which we're going to talk later, that gain reduction light is clicking every time that click is going. That's telling me that this click is pretty loud for my overall mix. It's pretty uncomfortable, even just talking over this. So I'm just going to smidgen it down slightly. The next thing I'm going to do, now this is going to be very subjective. Let me just do this real quick. So this next thing I'm going to do is going to be very subjective. Everybody's going to choose different things, but I'm going to add in my drum set. Now, I know not everybody adds in all these elements, but this is going to be a generic mix. So I'm going to bring the click back in, and I'm going to start bringing in my drum set. Now that click doesn't sound as bad to my ears. Don't really have anything going on in the toms. Bring in some cymbals. Okay, so now we have the foundation of our mix. I've got my click as loud as I want it to be. I haven't changed the volume of my click. It just got more easy to listen to because we added stuff. And so I've got my kick as loud as I want it to go. I've got my kick and snare and my overheads going in, so I have some idea of what the drums are going to do. Now, the next thing I'm going to do personally is I'm going to start adding in some elements of the mix to bring up just enough that I know what other people on the team are doing. So we'll go to this guitar. So let's just say that we're building this mix for Megan or whoever the lead vocalist is. So this is going to be their instrument, this acoustic guitar. And right away when I turn it up, what you hear is a lot of low end, a lot of mid range, a lot of mud. And you can just see how that's masking the kick and the snare and the drums. Let's listen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of a lot of the information in this signal that I don't need. A lot of that low mid-range is going to muddy up our mix, and we're not going to be able to tell what other things are doing. We can already kind of tell that we're losing some of the definition from our drums and from the click. So I'm going to turn down the bass and the mid on this acoustic guitar, and we'll see what happens. And you can see there, just by doing those two small changes, not only can you still hear the guitar, you can hear the guitar very clearly now, but also the click and the drum kit came back into focus. We'll just listen to that one more time. So now I'm actually going to turn this up just slightly. Okay, now I'm going to turn up my voice because I'm the vocalist, so we're going to just go ahead and start turning up vocal 2. And again, we're getting a lot of the same stuff that we found with the acoustic guitar. There's a lot of low end and mid-range information that we just don't need. And so what we're going to do is kind of do the same thing. We're going to roll some of those lows and mids back. And what that's going to do is bring a lot of clarity to that vocal. But more importantly, it's not going to mask other elements of our mix down the line. If we don't do this now, if we didn't do that with the guitar and the vocal, as we start turning other things up, we're really going to lose a lot of that picture. So let's go ahead and listen again. So we can hear that just by doing those two small changes, the vocal did get a little bit more shrill, a little bit more harsh. But for our in-ear mix, what we need is clinical. We need to know what is happening. And so we can add in some vibe with some other stuff later. But what we need initially is clinical accuracy. Can we hear things well? So we'll listen to that one more time, and then we'll just add in a little bit of vocal reverb and see what happens.
King Jesus, for the cross that you carry, for the grave that is empty, you are worthy. King Jesus, with great exaltation, with the reverence from nations, you are holy.
We can add too much. We can have none. So I find that just softens the vocal a little bit, makes it a little bit more pleasant to listen to. We can still tell what's going on, but it's not quite as shrill and hard. Okay, so let's move on to some other instruments. Let's add in the bass guitar, and we'll see what that sounds like.
For the cross that you carry, for the grave that is empty.
I'm actually going to turn the reverb down slightly. Go back to the bass.
With great exaltation, with the ravens from nations, you are holy, King Jesus. And we are declaring, we agree with the heavens, you are holy, King Jesus. We lift you up.
Okay, so we can hear the bass nice and clear. One thing that I'm going to do, and this is all going to be subjective, but this is just, to kind of help you guys understand some things, is I'm actually going to change this mid in the bass. I'm going to turn it down, and then I'm going to start using the frequency knob to sweep around and see if I can keep, that body, the thickness of the bass, but still clean it up just a little bit. I feel like it's masking some of my drums and getting in the way just slightly. So let's listen to that and see what we can do. Another thing you can do if you're not sure what you're hearing is we can do this the opposite direction. We can turn the mid up and frequency sweep. So we'll bring it back down to where it was, and we'll listen to me doing that and see what happens. Now let's go ahead and just solo that because I feel like it's probably hard to tell. So we'll just listen to just that channel. So right there you can hear a lot of mid-range. So let's turn that down. You can hear how much that it kept the low end, it kept the body, but we can listen again. Here's middle of the road. There's just no change. And then this is without it. And now let's listen to it in context with the mix. I'm going to start with middle of the road, no change. Okay, so I feel like we've gotten that bass to sit in there pretty nicely just by adjusting the mid-range. Haven't touched the high or the low. It's subjective. You might want to turn those up or down more. You notice that I haven't panned anything yet. Everything that we've worked on so far is all stuff that if this is the position I'm in, if I'm in the lead vocal and acoustic guitar, I want everything right down the middle. I want the kick and the snare right down the middle. I want the bass right down the middle. And now we're going to get into elements of the mix that I still want context for. I still want to know what my electrics are doing, but maybe it's not quite as important clinically for me to know every detail, but I want the vibe there. So we're going to start turning up other guitars. We're going to kind of dial them in, and we're going to use panning left and right to fit them in the mix in a way that doesn't get in the way. So we'll try that now.
King Jesus, for the cross that you carry, for the grave that is empty, you are worthy, King Jesus.
So we can see just by panning, doing nothing to that instrument at all, just by panning, it got it way out of the way. It's way in our left ear, but we can hear it very clearly, almost too much so. It's almost distracting at this point. It's so clear, and we haven't touched any of the EQ. So let's listen to that again. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull out some low end and some mid range, and we're just going to see what that does to it. Now, you might subjectively dislike that, and that's fine. But what that's doing for me is it's putting it in my left ear, and it's also taking out that low information and that mid-low information. And what happened in the background was the bass became much more clear again. And so we'll go ahead, I'll reset these back to the middle, and I want you to pay attention to what happens to the bass when we're changing these settings. To me, on a clinical level, having these higher up just gets them closer to that bass, and it makes the two signals a little less distinctive from one another. You might like that. This is just an option for you to consider as you're building your mix. So let's go ahead and listen to that again. I'm going to pull these back out. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to this second electric guitar, and we're going to pan it to the right this time, and we'll probably try the bass and mid, but let's just see what it sounds like. So in this instance, a lot of what that electric guitar player is playing is very high range information, frequency range information. And so, in this specific loop, maybe you don't feel the need to pull out the mid and the bass. But remember, there's three other songs, and there's a lot of parts where there's probably going to be chunky electric guitars. And so we'll try pulling this out. It's probably not going to affect that high-end information, but when he switches to doing like bar chords and chunky stuff, it's going to help in the same way that doing it with our left ear did. So let's listen to that. So we can hear how that made it a little bit more thin. on its own, soloed by itself, but we're not going to listen to it soloed by itself. What we're going to do is we're going to listen to it in context with the rest of the band, and thinning it out just ever so slightly is going to help separate it from the other elements of the mix. It's going to help that bass stay true. It's going to help you kind of see the whole image of the band. You might not like that, and you might want to keep it up. It's up to you how you use these tools. So we're going to unsolo that now.
Your hands, the stripes on your back. You are worthy, King Jesus, for the cross that you carried, for the grave that.
Okay, so for this set, that's all the major elements of our mix. There's no other, instruments on stage. There's really no other vocals on stage. And so at this point, you might consider that done. We have a couple things we can play with. We do have the front of house left and right mix, and we have the room mic mix. And so what I'm going to start with, just out of preference, is I'm going to start with the room mic mix, which is going to pick up some of the front of house speakers, but it's going to pick up the voices of the congregation. And once I've got that where I feel like I like it, then I'm going to bring in the front of house. Important note, this room mix is mono, meaning it's going to be right down the middle, and you can only pan it to the left ear or to the right ear. You can't make it stereo. And so, that's why I'm choosing to start with this one, because this one has more potential to kind of like mess up what we've just done, but also it has more of what I desire to hear. I desire to hear the humans that are singing with us, and then I'm going to add this in for vibe later. So let's go ahead and listen to that.
Lift you up, we lift you up, we lift you higher. For the holes in your head, for the stripes on your back. You are worthy, Jesus, for the cross that you carry, for the grave that is empty. You are worthy.
So let's go ahead and do a little thing where I'm going to mute and unmute the room mix, and we're going to hear the difference. What is it actually doing to our overall mix? So hopefully you can hear that took a very flat, very static clinical mix that's allowing us to hear all the elements in a way that we know what's going on. And it's added a lot of depth and space and vibe. It's made it musical. It's made it more pleasant to listen to. Now, you might want to turn that down less. You might not like how loud it is. But that's hopefully what you're hearing from there. And then we're going to go ahead and bring up this front of house left and right in the background. And this is going to be stereo. So this is going to be, way out on the right and left side, and everything in the middle that we just worked on should be preserved. And so we're going to see what that does to the mix now. Let's take a listen. And just like we did with the room mics, I'm going to mute and unmute this so we can see what it's doing to our mix. Let's take a listen. Now, that's nice and subtle, I don't think it's as drastic as when we were muting and unmuting our room mix, but we have the room mix in. So we can do the same thing, but I'm going to take the room mix out entirely before we start. Now, primarily what I'm hearing when I'm turning this on and off, when I'm turning it back on, I'm hearing a lot of enhancement of reverbs on electric guitars, on vocals. I'm hearing some nice warmth and thickening. It is quite subtle. These two things are also things that you might consider rolling some of the low end out of and maybe a touch of the mid range out of. Remember, these are not things that you want to make clinical. These are things that you're using to add in musicality and vibe and feel and texture. And so if you go too far with removing bass and mid, you're going to end up with something that's fairly clinical, and it's not going to add in a lot of that vibe. But if you notice that when you're turning it up, you can never find a sweet spot because you just feel like it's smearing things too much. That's a time to come in and bring down some bass, bring down some mid on the front of house and the room mics, and that's going to clean up a lot of that low end. Low end and low end, they don't get along. High range information, it can fit together a lot easier, but low end information does not like additional low end information. So if you're finding that when you're using these, you just can't get happy, try turning them up till you can hear them and then pulling some bass out first and pulling some mid out second and see if that helps you. So let's go ahead and listen to that one more time.
For the cross that you carry, for the grave that is empty, you are worthy, King Jesus. With great exaltation, with the reverence from nations, you are.
Okay, before we move on to showing you guys how to save and recall all the work we just did, one thing that I just want to point out again is at this point in the mix, you can be tempted to want to go and turn this click up because you feel insecure about the timing or you feel like you're not sure. And so you might want to go back and turn this click up. But if you remember when we started, this click was as loud as it was comfortable to listen to. That has not changed. It is still that loud. The only thing that has changed is it's gotten more comfortable to hear because we've added all these other signals in. But if I go back and I solo this out, which we're going to do, and we're going to listen to the volume again, you're going to hear again that it is quite loud. So let's do that real quick. Now, some of you might say, that's not loud enough for me. I can go much louder, and that's fine. All I'm saying is when you start building a mix, if you have set this to the volume that you are comfortable listening to it at, it can be tempting when you're finished to then go back and turn that back up. But really what you need to do is do the hard work of inching everything else back down so that this is still on top. And again, you can, now that we've built that mix, we do have a little bit of room to adjust our main if I unmute it. And in addition to that, we also have our output. And then the last knob we have is our limiter. That's the GR, stands for gain reduction. You should just see that blink at really loud parts, and we'll watch what happens when we listen. And all that's doing is it's taming those really harsh transients, things like a snare hit or the click or just something that is really fast and hard. And once you kind of dial this in, you can mess with your output gain. That's actually squishing your dynamics. So the loudest part of your mix is getting quieter. And then we use the output to turn the whole thing up, which makes the lower part of our mix come up. So the loudest part's coming down, and then we're turning it all up together. And so we're getting a much more squished mix, which can be good. It helps you hear everything all the time, but sometimes it can get rid of some of the musicality. So we'll listen to that one more time. And you can see what happens there if that gain reduction light is on all the time. I'm slamming the mix into the limiter. You can hear it fall apart. The vocal is doing some weird stuff. And so that's what, you want to be able to use it gently, but you want to be careful with it as well. So we'll reset that. All right, if you can't be fussed with the limiter, just turn it all the way to the right and just use that as a volume knob, but that's there if you want it. Now let's talk about saving and restoring. So we have two buttons up here, recall and store. We're going to use the store button, and we're going to use it to save all of our work, and I'm going to choose channel 8 for this demonstration. So I'm going to hold store. You can see the light turns red, and I'm going to click 8. Now we got a solid light. I'm going to click 8 a second time, and we got a solid light, and we should have storage there. So let's see what happens. Hopefully I don't make a mistake and this demonstration goes south, but we'll take a listen. Okay, we did do it. I just had stored it with the main muted. That was the problem. So the store worked. So just to go back over that, you hold store, you hit the number you want to store it on, hit it a second time, and it'll store it. But because I had it muted because we were talking, it stored it in a muted state. So just to show you that that's actually happening. Let me restore it without the mute on. I'm sorry. So it is indeed working. And what I was doing there was holding recall and then pressing any of these numbers, and it's going to pull that save file. So once I've stored it on channel 8, if I recall channel 8, and then because nothing's stored on 7 yet, if I recall that, it's just going to set everything to 0. And so we'll try that now. I'm going to recall 8 and then 7 and then 8 and then 7. So that's how you save and recall. Just to go over that one more time, you're going to hold store down and you're going to press one of the numbers that you want to save it on twice. And then when you're ready to recall, you hold a recall and you select the save file you want to do. So that's kind of in-ear monitor training. That's the long and the short of it. We'll probably clip this up into some helpful shorter clips. I'd love to help you guys with any of your mixed questions. Any questions you have from this video, I would love to hear. This is quite subjective, this tutorial, towards the main vocalist. You could do one for a bass guitar, which would probably sound quite different. You could do one for an electric guitar, which would probably sound quite different. But the tools that hopefully I've shown you today are useful no matter what your primary thing is. Maybe if you're an electric guitar, instead of panning yourself left or right, you're down the middle, and the acoustic guitar is panned to the left, or the vocalist is slightly panned to get it out of your way. Ultimately, these are all tools in your belt, and there's not a right or wrong answer. It's just what gets you to where you need to be most effectively quickest. That's the right answer. If you can get to where you need to be clinically, you can play well, you can hear what everybody else is doing, and then you can add in some vibe and feel musical again, then you've done it. There's no wrong answer to that. If it's good for you, it's good. And then lastly, I just will encourage you guys that a good set of in-ear monitors is going to do more for you than anything that we just did. If you are listening on a bad pair of in-ear monitors, or worse, you're listening on consumer headphones or earbuds that are not meant for in-ear monitoring, all of the work we just did is not going to be super effective, because those listening devices are not built for what we're doing here. So I would encourage you guys, get some good in-ear monitors. If you have questions about that, we'd love to talk to you. But I think that's about it. I hope this was helpful. Thanks, guys.